As a photographer, I am always on the lookout for places that might make good portrait settings. And here in Ohio, in May and early June, we have these beautiful wildflowers, and they're growing seemingly everywhere. But really, they're mostly along roadways and kind of major roadways. But there are just these beautiful purple flowers everywhere. And I really wanted to do a portrait session in them, at least nearby, using them as a backdrop, somehow work these flowers into a portrait session. But there are always places that you just simply can't stop. They're inaccessible. It's always along a busy roadway, or they're maybe on someone's private property. And I suppose I could, stop and ask someone if I could use their property to take portraits, but that's a little out of my comfort zone. And even so, even when they're on someone's private property, they're still generally alongside a really busy roadway, and it's just not really ideal. Anyway, a few weeks ago, I decided that I really wanted to do a portrait session with these wildflowers. So I went about trying to hunt down a place where we could actually get to them. So I just went on an adventure looking for a place to do this session. So the first place I went was a complete bust. It's a park that's really neat, especially in the fall. It has, a couple of neat barns, a lot of fences, a lot of great posing options, a lot of great scenery at certain times of year. So I thought there was a chance there might be some wildflowers there, but there was nothing there. Then I went to a nearby bioreserve that's associated with a local university. And I thought surely there had to be some wildflowers there somewhere. And that was also a bust. Although, to be fair, I didn't go very far into the bioreserve. I know there are paths that go, much farther in. There are some fields down farther. If I kept going, I might have had more luck. But it was a super hot day, and I didn't want to just go exploring and find out that there was nothing there. Also, to be honest, I'm mostly into nature, sort of as a theory. Not really. I'm more of an indoorsy kind of girl, and the chances of encountering a spider web or something were pretty high. So I didn't go too far into the bioreserve, although I did stumble upon this, which was kind of cute. I don't really know what's going on here, but it looks like they rented some goats for some reason. They're probably getting rid of some sort of, I know that they use goats in the South to get rid of kudzu. It must be something like that, like renting goats to get rid of stuff. So anyway, I at least got to see some goats. That was pretty cute. I'll take some goat visiting on a hot day when I'm out adventuring. Anyway, the next place I tried was along the local bike path. And it was a place that I knew from driving by. There were at least some wildflowers on the edge of the path. And there was a place to park not too far away to get to that point of the bike path. So I went there, and there weren't as many as I had hoped. I did find some flowers, and I didn't get very good video of it. There were actually more along this path than what I'm showing here. But even more frustrating was the fact that I knew that a week or so earlier there had been a lot more flowers there. But it had rained the entire previous week, so there just was no chance for us to go out and do portraits. The script is in the way. So you can see here they're even starting to look a little dried out, and they're dying a little bit. But there were enough that I thought we could get some decent shots. I can do a lot with camera angles and shallow depth of field. So I thought this would work, and with at least one location that I knew or was pretty sure would work, I almost called it a day. But then I wanted to try one more location that I knew sometimes had flowers, sometimes didn't. It just seemed to vary year to year. This is where I really struck gold. This is at a nearby university, and it's way up at the top of the hill, kind of, in a place that I don't think a lot of people even know about. It's by some of their newer dorms. Otherwise, there aren't campus buildings there, or at least there aren't classroom buildings there. And this is what I found. And it's not the purple and yellow wildflowers that I was looking for, but it is a lovely little field of flowers. And sometimes we just have to be a little flexible, because finding a good spot to shoot in the purple and yellow flowers was just proving to be really difficult. But I really like this location, and I thought we could do some really beautiful portraits here. So I recruited a senior portrait client of mine to pose for me for some pictures. And I told her that we would be shooting in a wildflower field, and, to wear a long flowy dress if she had one, something preferably, a solid color, maybe even white, so that it wouldn't, it wouldn't clash with the flowers, and it might really go well with wherever we ended up shooting. And boy, did she deliver. She even bought a dress for the occasion, which, was kind of going above and beyond. She told me that she, in her mind, was thinking that an ethereal fairy look would be good in a field of wildflowers, and that's what she went for when she ordered this dress. She also said that she had been inspired by the wardrobe and general feel of a portrait session that I had done a couple years earlier, and she had seen the photos on my website. And that's always a really good feeling to know that, that a session that you did connected with other clients. I didn't get any video of the session itself, and I wish I had. I just wasn't thinking that far ahead. This was the result. We got some really beautiful portraits. We went to do the session right around like 7:45, 8 o'clock at night, as it was, about an hour from sunset. It's summer here, so sunset is really late, but we had beautiful lighting. It was just really soft lighting, and then, later in the day was better anyway, because it was a really hot day. Again, my model did a great job. She just was great in front of the camera, and she really understood the assignment. Like, she knew that this was supposed to be like a very whimsical photo shoot, and she just did a great job. We did try to use the bike path where I found the purple and yellow flowers, because that was still part of my vision. I still wanted to try that. We immediately got attacked by mosquitoes. It was bad. It was really bad. So we just kind of ran for it and only got a couple quick shots there before we gave up. I think it's funny because those purple and yellow flowers were the whole point of the entire exercise, and then that's not what I really ended up doing. So, it pays to be flexible when you go out looking for locations to work in, because you just never know. I'm so glad that we did the other flower field first, because we got a lot of really great shots, and I don't know that we would have been up to it, and especially her, if we tried to do it after she'd already been attacked by mosquitoes, she really might not have been up for it, and that would have been valid. But I want to show you something about the first location that we did end up using, because it really does look like a field of wildflowers out somewhere remote, and it's actually in the parking lot. If you look just a little bit to the side of where she is, it is just parking lot. It's asphalt. It's not attractive. It doesn't seem like a great place for portraits, but it turned out beautifully. And this isn't a Photoshop trick or anything. This isn't the post-processing I did. This was about using the angles and the right lens and just cropping where I needed to get the parking lot out of the picture. We ended up with some really beautiful photos. I think they came out great. I hope this will inspire you to keep your eyes open, because you can get some really great photos with a really small area, just a little bit of, wildflowers or something visually interesting. And the more you practice with your equipment, whatever lens, whatever camera you're using, you'll really begin to understand how you can use it in the lenses and the right settings to make even random parking lots work for portraits. I shot most of these on my Canon 5D Mark IV with an 85mm lens. I find that it works really well for something like this. It made a really shallow depth of field, really soft, dreamy background. It really turned the flower field into just this really kind of magical place. Some others were shot on my Sony a7 III with a 20 to 40mm lens, but same thing. That was just a matter of like using a good angle and cropping it in well. Some of them I did get parking lot in. I didn't really take the right angle when I was shooting those, but you can see all that's possible. I think we look at other people's portraits and we think, oh, I don't have any place beautiful like that. Well, yeah, those are really neat portraits, but I don't have a whatever castle or giant flower field or anything else like that. And yeah, that's true, but you can work with what you have. I guarantee there's probably something somewhere around where you live that could be turned into a really neat spot for portraits, if you just kind of remember to open your eyes and remember that when you're controlling the camera, you can crop out things that you don't want, and you can highlight things that you do want. And yeah, no, I'm just rambling about photography, which I could do ad infinitum. Find those unique locations. Look at the local parking lot and see if there isn't a flower field right next to it that you could turn into a great space for portraits. So that's about it. Thanks for watching.